All right. I think everything is set up and ready. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to Meeple Leaf Reviews. Hopefully this is sounding okay. No one's here yet to confirm it for me. Couple housekeeping items for those who are going to be watching this on YouTube. You may notice that I have a new camera set up on my desktop so that I can actually look at the screen and see the chat rather than having to use my phone. That should make it much easier to handle. Plus, it'll also stop the camera from shutting out every 20 minutes and me having to get up and switch it on and off. So, let's get started. I see someone has just joined me. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Now, starting off with topics. Oh, excellent. Sounds working well. So I actually just finished playing Exit, the board game, the kind of escape room style games. I've played through the first three. I got the new set of three. This one was the Polar Station. It was tough. It was really tough. The thing that I thought about after playing this game was how different of an experience these single-use consumable games are versus regular games. Not in the simple fact that you can only play it once, but you just get one chance to play it. So if you play another game and you try out a strategy, or if you're mentally not there and you do poorly, we'll try next time. Better luck next time. But with this game, I don't know if it was just maybe my mind wasn't in the right mode, or if it was the scenario, but we couldn't get the clues or the puzzles. Like when you reach the point where you're holding something up at arm's length and squinting at it to see if you're missing something just by how you're looking at it, your mind is just not in the right space. So with a normal game, if you have a bad game, well, you can just play it again. With this one, because it's literally you're cutting up pieces, you know the answers once you've played, you can't do that. So the potential, I think, for enjoyment is very high, but the potential for having a bad experience is also really there. Now, luckily with those, we have a question. What group size did you play Exit games with? I played it 2-player. Yeah, I think 2-player is probably best. I don't feel like there's enough clues going around at the same time for multiple groups to try and get involved. Usually there's one complete clue that everyone can work on, and just having 2 people being able to put it between you and work on it seems to work well. I highly recommended the Exit games to Jacob before, and he tried playing a couple of them, and I can't remember what his group size was. I think it was 5 or 6 or something like that, and he said he didn't have a very good experience playing it, and I was like, yeah, no kidding. With that many people involved, nobody is really involved because there's not enough for you to do. But overall, I've really enjoyed the Exit style games. I think they do some cool things, and you have to think about things in a really cool way. They utilize pieces of the game in interesting ways. I did try the other escape room style Unlock from Space Cowboys. I found I didn't enjoy that one nearly as much. I have the 3 of them, but I've only played the one. I felt it was more just like math. You find basically a red and a blue piece on cards, and you add the number together and then input that into the app, and then that unlocks new stuff. Whereas I feel the Exit games do different things, and actually you have to think outside the box rather than just combining stuff. Now the other thing that I want to talk about is I actually have a game set up for tomorrow morning of 1846. I talked about this one the last time on the live stream, and I've also done it before and after for it. This is my first 18XX game. played through it. I thought the first play was just okay. But then I went away and I literally couldn't stop thinking about the game for days and days and days until I got to play it again. I was thinking about how I could manipulate different aspects of the game. So even though I didn't have the most enjoyable experience the first play, it got me thinking. I spent hours and hours outside of the game thinking about the things that I could potentially do within the game. And that's a pretty cool thing when you can spend time outside of a game thinking about it and imagining what you're going to do during the next time you play. So thought about it while I was up at work. I came home. We set up another day where we played a 3-player game. The second play went a lot better. Interesting things were happening right up until the very end of the game. And I tried to do a couple different things. Didn't quite work out the way I wanted, but it got me excited to try it again and try and do different things. I started one company with the intention of somebody else investing in it, and then I would just get it to the point where they had enough stock so that I could sell all of mine, make them the president. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to leave the company with no trains whatsoever. And in 18XX, if a company, or in 1846, if a company doesn't have a trains, it's forced to buy one. And if the company doesn't have enough money, then the player has to pay out of pocket. So I wanted to get a company. I wanted to get rid of all of its trains, sell it off to one of my other companies, get rid of all of its money as well, and then dump it on another player. That was my big strategy that I was trying to do. Didn't quite work out, but I still had fun trying to do that and trying to manipulate things in a way to do that. So tomorrow, I actually have a 4-player game set up, and I'm looking forward to that. I think with more people, it'll be a little bit more interesting as well. Now, another game that I got to play recently, and I put a before and after up on the channel a couple days ago, and this was Dragonfire. I had talked about before how much I like Arkham Horror, the card game, and I was thinking that this would be sort of a similar thing, but in the Dungeons and Dragons universe, and I like high fantasy probably more than I do horror genre. So I got it. I heard it was a re-theme of Shadowrun Crossfire, but what I didn't appreciate going into the first, before I bought it, was that instead of having a deck that you customize and build over multiple plays, it's a reset deck builder like Legendary or Dominion, where you have the base set of cards and you rebuild them every single game. So that kind of turned me off a little bit. The other thing about Dragonfire is I started with the quick start adventure, and if you have it, I would suggest not doing so, because I don't think it's balanced for 4 players, and you don't get a good sense, I think, of what the game is trying to do, and it was such a horrible experience. It was probably my worst experience of a first play of a game that I've ever had. It was I purchased 4 cards in a deck builder where you're trying to build a deck. I maybe cycled through once and purchased 4 cards, and again, the game was just over in 23 minutes. It was not enjoyable at all. Question, have I already commented on my initial thoughts of Kingdom Death Monster? Is it meeting my expectations from when I backed it on Kickstarter? I did talk about it in the previous live stream, but I can talk about it again. I got the game. I got everything put together. I have, at least for the first few monsters, I have since played the game, I believe, 19 times. 19 hunts, showdowns, and settlement phases, kind of one lantern year. So that should say how much I've enjoyed playing it if I'm willing to play it 19 times. I mean, it's a completely different style of game of stuff that I normally play. Normally, I'm into Euros. I'm into more strategic thinking, more you do something, you have an idea of what the outcome is, or you can manipulate it in a certain way. So it's definitely the complete opposite of that. Like, things just happen, and you just have to deal with it. You just have to suck it up. You're coming back from a hunt, a chasm opens up, and your favorite survivor fell into the chasm and died. And there's nothing you can do about it. But what I like about the game a lot is, even though it has that chaos and that loss, thankfully you have hopefully a lot of survivors that you shouldn't get too attached to anyone in particular. But there's these moments of intensely important decisions that you can make, especially this innovation deck that you can build in your settlement. So you have this deck of cards. You have like language, embed, and hovel, all these different advancements that you can get, and you can innovate. You draw 2 and you choose 1, and the abilities that they give you, or the bonuses, are really interesting, really meaningful. And then depending on what you choose, it's kind of like a tech tree where you add certain ones back into the innovation deck based on the choices that you make. I really enjoy that aspect of the game. I really like the crafting. Like, I feel like I'm going out, I'm hunting something, I'm getting these resources, and I'm coming back and I'm building this super awesome armor, as well as you're always searching for more, so it always makes you want to play again. You're like, oh, I just need 3 more bones and wait first so I can build this next set of armor, and then maybe I can get the set bonus for it. So it's like, okay, well, let's play again. Let's go out and try and get those resources, and then come back. It's similar to how I feel when I play like Civilization on the computer. You're always just like, just one more turn, because you can see the benefit you're going to get the next time, and you want to see what's going to happen. So you're always like, okay, well, let's just do one more hunt and get the stuff, and then see what happens. And then something else happens. It's like, okay, just one more hunt, and let's get these resources. So it keeps promoting you to want to play over and over again. Plus, there's kind of these story events that happen that are really interesting. Again, you usually just roll the dice and see what happens, but sometimes you can choose a path, and depending on what you choose, that could have big influence on the outcome of what's going to happen. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. Stuff is just going to happen, and you're not going to be able to deal with it. But overall, I'm enjoying the story, I'm enjoying the progression, I'm enjoying the harvesting and building, and that sense of we're actually building something up in the game. But overall, for Kingdom Death Monster, I'm definitely happy I backed it. I'm happy that I got all the expansions as well, because playing after 19 times, we've mostly just fought 2 of the huntable monsters, the White Lion and the Screaming Antelope. So I think having more variety in huntable monsters would be necessary to just keep on playing. So, another thing that I wanted to kind of talk about is a game that I recently got rid of that was a huge hit over this last year, and that's Terraforming Mars. I've played the game, I think, 13 times or something. I did a review with Jacob, and I reviewed it very favorably. But the more and more I played it, the better I think myself and my game group got at the game, to the point where I think we were too good at the game that we ended up breaking it for our enjoyment. And what do I mean by that? I think there's certain cards in the game that in order to get a return on your investment, so you need to pay money to get them into your hand, you need to pay money to get them out. If it's a production card, you need to wait a certain number of turns before that production starts coming in and starts accumulating. So you have a certain number of generations that you need the game to last in order to get your value out of the cards. Now, we played a 3-player game, the Corporation Era. That's the longer version when you start off with less production, and it only took us 7 generations. So the math behind the cards, you can see, okay, I'm going to spend this much to get into my hand, this much to play it out. I'm not going to get back the money that I paid for it. So I found we were doing a lot more of the standard projects and just going that way. So I would just draw 4 cards. I know the game wasn't going to last long enough to make them worth playing out, so then we would just do standard projects, and then the game would be over very quickly because we're all pushing up to get the 3 global parameters up, and then the game is just over. And I introduced a new player to the game in my last couple plays of it, and they said they liked what the game was doing, but they didn't get a chance to see what the game had to offer because the game was just over so quickly. We played a 4-player game with 3 people pushing the global parameters to try and get points and income. It ended before they had a chance to really explore anything of the game. So I felt like I got to the point where I could see the math behind the game too well, and it just wasn't enjoyable to play anymore. I didn't feel like I could explore anything because the game wasn't going to last long enough. But I still think it's a good game. I think it hit on something that's kind of addictive because it's been about a year since I got the game. Playing a game 13 times in a year, I mean, is no small feat when I'm playing dozens and dozens of games. And I always felt like, okay, yeah, I'd like to play Terraforming Mars. I'd like to come back to this. So I think it hit on some sort of addictive behavior that kind of gets people into it and enjoying the game. Again, I think it's a good game, but it's just I've kind of played it out after the 13 plays. Any questions that anyone has? Just type them in. Let me know. Otherwise, I'll kind of just keep on talking. Another game that I wanted to talk about. I got to play The Voyages of Marco Polo recently. And you often hear about games that overstay their welcome. They just go a little bit too long. There's just too much happening that you wish it would end a little bit sooner. I think with The Voyages of Marco Polo, it's a game that understays its welcome. I wish that the game would last longer than what it does, because I feel like the whole time I'm playing it, I'm like, the end of the game is soon. The end of the game is soon. And I don't really feel that comfort level where I can play the game without worrying about the game being over. I wish it was just a little bit longer to try and do different things, because you really get, I think it's 5 rounds. You have 5 dice, so that's 25 dice that you can place. Some of the actions take 3 dice, or if you're traveling, it takes 2 dice. So you don't really get a chance to do much. I mean, you can buy a few more, but I just wish the game was longer and that I could spend a bit more time in that universe, in that game, and fully explore it. So I think it's one that understays its welcome, for sure. There's another game too that I played recently where I'm not sure so much about understanding its welcome, but that whole feeling of the game being over almost immediately, like from the very first action, you're like, this game is almost done. Was Vinhos. You get, I believe, 6 rounds in the game, and you can take 2 actions each round, so you get essentially 12 actions, plus being able to get different bonus ones. But from that very first action, I just feel like the clock is on, it's ticking. I'm always thinking about the end of the game where I can't get comfortable, I can't focus on the game that I'm playing. I feel like trying to set something up, I won't get the benefits out of it because the game is almost over. I recorded my review for Lisboa. That's another Vital Lacerda game, who did Vinhos. And I made a comment there about how in Lisboa, that initial clock feeling, the clock running out, isn't there because people aren't getting their engine going. You have more time at the beginning, and you don't feel like the game is going to be over, that you can kind of be like, okay, let's set up a strategy, let's get all the pieces into place, and then let's start running that engine, I think. And then there's kind of a trigger point partway through the game where you see the end coming, and then you feel the pressure building, and you're like, well, I need 4 more actions. Am I going to get 4 of them? I like that feeling much better in a game rather than just feeling like the game is over from the very, very beginning. Going on to something completely different, I want to talk about expansions to games, because I have a few games on my shelf that I've been wanting to play, but I have the expansion included with them, and then I kind of just I pass over them because of the expansion and how much complexity the expansion adds versus gameplay that it gives. Now, there's one company in particular I feel is really bad for this, and that's CGE, Czech Games Edition. The expansions for Dungeon Lords, for Tzolk'in, for Dungeon Pets, I think they just add so much complexity to the game, so much fiddliness that you need to remember and keep track of. I mean, even for the Tzolk'in one, there was these quick actions that you could take, and you literally had to lay the pieces on all those gears on the board, and it was so fiddly, and it didn't add that much that I started playing them without the expansions included. So the last time I played Dungeon Lords, my wife was like, okay, do you want to play with the expansion? I was like, no, it adds more stuff that I need to try and keep track of. Plus, it's sometimes so convoluted that I need to go back and reread the rulebooks. And anytime that a game is streamlined to the point where I don't need to worry about picking up the rulebook when I pull the game off, it's just that much more likely to get to the table. So I think CGE, their expansions, they make things too complicated. They try and add too much in, and in such a way that it just makes it so fiddly that I don't think they're worth playing with when the base games are so good on their own. The other thing with CGE games, or I should say one game in particular, and I recently put the game up for trade, and that's Dungeon Pets. The scalability of the game is not that great for 2 players. You have these certain actions that become unavailable. You just can't take them. No matter what you want to spend or what you want to do, you just can't take those actions. And it kind of rotates through on these like little rondels around the board. So in a 3 or 4 player game, maybe you could, I really need this action this turn. Okay, I can spend a lot and then I can get it. I still had to spend a lot, but the possibility of me doing the action is still there. But with 2 players, you're kind of just playing around these dummy players that block and you can't do anything about it. That it kind of limits your options to the point where I'd rather just play something else at 2 players. Now, Dungeon Lords also has a kind of a setup rules for 2 and 3 player. But with Dungeon Lords, I think it does a 2-player rules a little bit better than it does for 3-player rules. In a 3-player game, you have you're choosing these action cards face down, and then there's different tiers for each action on the board. And usually the second tier is usually the best. So in 3 players, the dummy player just flips up 3 cards. He puts his piece in the middle of 3 actions. He takes the best action, and there's nothing that you can do about it. However, in 2 players, there's 2 dummy players. 2 of their 3 actions goes into the second spot, but the third one you can choose, and when you choose that one, it goes into the first spot. So there's a lot more strategic thinking there of, okay, I'm first player. I want to get this level action, so I'll play this one for the dummy player. That'll put it on the first spot, and then that'll bump me up to the 2 spot, and then I'll get the better benefit. So I feel in 2-player, you actually have a decision that you can use to benefit yourself as a player with the dummy player, whereas 3-player is just random. There's nothing you can do about it. Same thing with Dungeon Pets in 2-player. It's just these specific spots are blocked throughout the game, and it just rotates. There's no decision that you can make for those. Oh yes, going back to Kingdom Death Monster, there's something else that I wanted to mention, because I kind of wanted to expand upon the whole dice rolling a little bit more in how that affects my enjoyment of the game. Because me and Jacob did a list a long time ago about my least favorite mechanisms in games, and I think my top one was dice determined combat. I hated that mechanism. Well, Kingdom Death Monster is mostly just dice determined combat. But where I think the difference is because when I talked about it before, I was thinking of something like Descent, where it's more of a competitive experience than a cooperative experience. Descent, I usually played 2 players. I controlled the heroes. A friend of mine controlled the monsters. So every time I missed with the dice, I failed, or every time he succeeded, there was that direct competition between me and another player that kind of just made it feel like, okay, well, that dice rolling sucked, or that just sucked. Whereas I think there's a sort of camaraderie with Kingdom Death, where the dice rolling is against the game. So you don't feel like there's another player at the table who's doing better than you simply because how the dice are rolling. It's you guys are, everyone around the table in Kingdom Death is equally having to deal with how the dice rolls are coming up. Another game that I talked about in the last live stream was Indonesia from Splotter. It's a game where you are acquiring companies, they're producing goods, you're selling them to cities, and then those companies are growing. And then the real interesting part of that game is when you get to the mergers phase. If I don't have a rice company and player 1 and player 2 each have a rice company, I could just announce they're going to merge. They have no say in it whatsoever. They're going up for merge, and then everyone gets a chance who has a slot left for a company to build on that. So that's probably the most interesting part of the game. And then based on how many plantations you own of the merged company, that kind of distributes the wealth for what the company goes for. But what I wanted to talk about was getting rules wrong in a game and how much of an impact that can have. In some games, if you forget to take a coin or you take an extra or pay an extra, it might be a little bit easier to adjust that. It's like, oh, I haven't been taking that coin for the last 4 rounds. Okay, we'll just take four coins now. But in the game of Indonesia, you can merge a rice and a spice company into a Siap Faji company. And I did that in the first era of the game. The game lasts 3 eras. So I did that in the first era. And then afterwards, when looking through the rulebook, about halfway through the game, we realized that actually that wasn't allowed until at least the second era in the game. Well, that kind of had a huge butterfly effect, because had I not merged those companies, then the 2 players would have had more income. They would have grew to even larger, and then they wouldn't have got the money from the merge. Like, the whole butterfly effect of what happened kind of soured that play a little bit for me. So I think that's, again, it can be a positive, like I was talking about with the exit games, where that consumable one-time experience could be something very unique that you only get once, and it can be an extreme positive or it can be an extreme negative. I think in a game like Indonesia, where everything that you do at the beginning of the game can have ripple effects throughout the entire game. Those very first decisions have huge impacts and are so meaningful. But then the other thing about having actions be as meaningful as what they are is that if you get a rule wrong early, it could just mess up the entire game going forward. Will I be doing a video of my top games of 2017? Yes, I will. I actually started putting the list together today. Let me just have a look here. Currently, I have 14 games that I've played from 2017. Now, I have a number of games that I haven't played yet, or ones that I've pre-ordered and are waiting for them to come in. One of the downsides of not going to Essen this year is a lot of the games that I'm interested in, I actually have to wait for them to get shipped out to me, so it's going to be a bit more delayed for me to get a chance to play them. But yeah, I definitely will be doing it. As of right now, those 14 games, I have 3 that are definitely on my top 10 list, and So let's hopefully I can get 7 more, because there's been some really big hits for me this year and some not so big hits. But I mean, I have Gaia Project coming, which is on a Terra Mystica game, and I love Terra Mystica a lot, so I'm expecting to enjoy that one. I have the new Uwe Rosenberg game, Newsfjord, coming. I'm expecting to like that one. Civilization: A New Dawn. I'm a huge Civilization fan of the video game, so hopefully I'll enjoy that game as well. So I have games coming that I think I will like, but it's just going to be a matter of getting the time to play them enough to see where they're going to stand. So it's going to be like the games of 2016. It is going to be a bit delayed till next year. The other thing that I'm still planning on doing is doing my top 50 games of all time. That was something that me and Jacob had planned on doing together before he left the channel. So I need to finalize my list, and then just put it out. But that's something else I'm planning on doing as well. I'll probably do it just after the new year, and then that'll be my trigger every year. Is every January I'll put out my top 50. I did a top 25 last year. I've played a lot of new games to me this year. This year alone, I've played almost 60 new titles. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that list. A lot of things have changed. I think this last year has probably been the year where I've changed a lot from my previous tastes, and kind of, I want to say, kind of found my groove with what I like. Let's see, some other things that I wanted to talk about was Lignum, the capstone game about cutting wood. Me and Jacob did a before and after for this one a long time ago. I am planning on doing a review of it as well. But what I wanted to talk about with this game is I've never had a game where there's been more moments where you are angry and cursing at your opponent. It just feels like everything that you want to do, they do it before you, and you're just, okay, I need to reevaluate again now because you took that, or I really want more rafts. Why do you keep taking the rafts on me? And because you're both moving down this supply path, and you alternate going down the path, taking different items or hiring workers to do various tasks. But so there's a limit every round of what's out there, and you can jump as far along that path as you want. So it's a game where you can really get into the head of your opponent and try and understand how do they value these items. How much is he valuing a raft? How much is he valuing a sled or this saw, or even the free food that's out there? And you use that evaluation to try and figure out, well, okay, how much can I pick up and before I think that he's going to make it there and pick that item. And sometimes you're just completely off on what you think they're going to be doing, and then they just take a completely unexpected action, and then it just throws you off. Throws you off when you're going next. The other thing that I've talked about that I like about games like this as well is you can try and beat your own score when you play. The game is about planning and having the right number of resources to do certain things. The requirements for like feeding and heating that the game give you are not that difficult. It's easy enough to plan for them and to not get any minus points. It's not like Agricola where it's just a constant struggle to feed your people. With Lignum, it's very easy to do, but the way you're going to win the game is having the most money. So trying to fit more plans in your plants to feed and heat, and then trying to fit another plan in there, and then another plan, and then seeing how much you can possibly get done in the course of a game to get the highest possible score that you can. I really enjoy that, trying to maximize all of your income that you're earning in to then get the most money out of it. Is really, really enjoyable in that game. Another game that I played actually last night was Solarius Mission. If you haven't heard of Solarius Mission, it's from Spielworks. So there's not many copies out there of the game, and it's really hard to describe the mechanisms of the game. It's a space exploration game, but there is no extermination in there. You're flying your little ship around, you're building spaceships, you're colonizing planets, you're completing missions for these different commercial hubs. And the way you do this is you take a dice, and then you have two options for each dice that you take. You can either take those colored resources, or you can do the dice action, which is very simple. I take this, I get either 2 yellow cubes, or I get 2 gold. And then there's oil, and then you have these technology dice on your board that you can upgrade to get more pips on them, so you can get more actions potentially. And you can also upgrade your warehouse space on your board. But you get 16 actions in the game. There's 4 rounds of 4 actions. And this is another game like Lignum where you're trying to push it in order to do the most throughout the game. Whereas Lignum is just planning and kind of processing things in a more efficient way. Solarius Mission does it where it's about comboing things together. It's about, okay, I take this action, I get this, and then you get a supplementary action where you can fly your spaceship around. If I complete a mission, and that's my first one on this hex, okay, well then I get to place an outpost there, which gives me another bonus. And then if I place that next to a commercial hub that was already built, then I get to trigger another outpost bonus that I have out there. And so it's all about comboing these actions together. Also with the spaceships, when you build them, they kind of give you a little bonus when you build them and at the end of every round. And also when you build a new spaceship, you trigger all the abilities of all your previous spaceships. So you're kind of building a little bit of an engine there as well. And it's really just trying to get the most points doing these different things. The game plays pretty quickly, but that combo nature in the game, I love trying to get a bigger and better string of combos together so I can get more and more done. The other thing that I really like about the game too is that it's a very low scoring game. Games have scored between 25 and I got my highest score last night of 43. So you can really get that feedback of how well you're doing and how more efficient you're being throughout the game with such a low scoring game. It's not like a game where there's say Russian railroads where there's literally hundreds and hundreds of points at the end, and you can't really evaluate, well, okay, I got 20 less points this time. How less efficient was I actually being? Whereas when you have a 20-point game and a 40-point game, you're like, okay, I did hugely better this time than last time. Keep some questions coming, guys. I'm running out of topics. I set up. I had a few topics there, and I was like, okay, I hopefully I won't need to go through all of these. But let's see, what else do I have to talk about here? Yes, this is another good one. So I talked about Arkham Horror earlier, deck building game where you build the deck outside of the game. I also played a few times recently Legends of the Five Rings. That's the new LCG head-to-head two-player game from Fantasy Flight. And I was thinking about it recently, and I really like how they did the deck building component in those games. Some other deck builders, like let's take Android Netrunner. You get a certain amount of influence that you can spend across all factions in the game. So there's a huge card pool that you have. Whereas in Arkham Horror and Legend of the Five Rings, it limits you when you select your card. So in Arkham Horror, you select your starting character. On the back, it tells you can have level 0 to 5 cards of this class, and you can have level 0 to 2 cards of this class. So that initial selection limits your card pool to the point where building your deck is not such of a hard thing to do, and it's not like I need to have all the cards out in front of me trying to put them together in the optimum way when building my deck. I also think it'll probably help with balancing things to make it easier, because you don't have to worry about the interaction of hundreds of cards in the game. And Legend of the Five Rings, it actually has 2 decks that you need to build, but the thing that they did in that game is once you select your starting faction and then you select cards from another faction to include, you can only ever go to that one other faction. So it's not like you can have a deck that consists of 5 factions cards. You get 2. So then if there's a card that you really like and you want to include it, well, then that limits your pool then for the rest of the cards that you're bringing in with your influence. So I think it makes it that step to get into the game, that step to deck build, much easier to manage for people. Have I done much solo gaming? Do I play Kingdom Death solo or with the group? I have not done much solo. I've played Mage Knight a few times solo. I played Terraforming Mars a couple times solo, just because there was nothing else going on. There was no one home for a few days. Actually, one of those plays of Terraforming Mars solo kind of turned me off from the game a little bit too, because I played one of the corps where you get that extra value for titanium, and I was focusing on getting titanium production and hoping to get the space cards that I can spend it on. I ended up losing the solo game. I didn't do it in time, but I ended up with over 140 credits worth of titanium left in my tray that I just couldn't use because I didn't draw the cards. And I mean, I was taking cards that allowed me to draw more, so that I could potentially get to some of them. So that kind of left a sour taste in my mouth, where it just came down to the randomness of the card draw that just meant that I couldn't do what my engine was trying to do. As for Kingdom Death, I've started 3 campaigns in the game. I played 1 campaign with me, my wife, and 2 friends from work. We played through 3 Lantern Years, and it's just a matter of us getting together again to play it, to continue that one. And then I started another campaign with me and my wife. We made it to Lantern Year 7 or 8, I think, and then we died. And then we started a 3rd campaign, the 2 of us. I mean, I can see Kingdom Death being an enjoyable solo experience. It might be a lot to manage with the 4 survivors, but I enjoy playing it with my wife, especially with having a baby around, because it's easy to just kind of stop playing for a few hours, take care of her, and then when she goes down for a nap, just pick it up again. And then, we get to spend time together playing a game. The other thing about, I've talked a lot about Kingdom Death this time, but the other thing too that I wanted to mention was, I mean, on the Kickstarter, and I know a lot of people's criticisms of it was the theme and how gruesome it is, and the images that it has in the game. And I must say that after playing it a lot, it's not, those sorts of things aren't just up and in your face throughout the game. I know, there definitely is stuff in there that is kind of risque, as you would say, but it doesn't feel like it's as to the forefront as what maybe a lot of people made it out to be. Let's see. What else do I have here? Something else. I already talked about 1846 and how I spent a couple days thinking about the game, thinking about strategies that I want to implement in the game before I actually played it. I got quite a bit of play time or play experience out of the game before I actually sat down and played it. There's another game that I was doing this with as well, and that's Arkwright, another heavy game. But I kind of just wanted to talk about games where you can think about the strategies, you can have an idea in mind before you actually ever sit down to play the game, and then you can just try and execute those things. And then you can take those learnings from those games and maybe tweak things a little bit, and then come back and try it again. So I don't think that's every game that you can do that with. With some games, the amount of interaction between players and the different actions that they take and how it affects what you do, that you kind of can't have specifics in mind when doing a strategy. You kind of just have to go with the flow, or even the game, how things happen and how things come up. You kind of just have to roll with the punches in the game. But I must say, I'm quite enjoying having a few games where I can kind of study the game mechanism outside of actually playing, and then trying to put something neat and interesting into effect when I sit down and actually play the game. You wouldn't be able to do that with Kingdom Death Monster. Just random stuff happens. You just roll with the punches and try and do your best. But with those, 1846 with Arkwright, you can do a lot more before you actually ever play. Another question: do you have any games you are looking forward to playing in 2018, Kickstarter or otherwise? Yes, I do. I actually have a list of, if I can find it, bear with me for one moment, of my pre-ordered games. So, not a 2018 game, but one that I probably won't get until 2018, since it's almost the end of the year, is Gloomhaven. I'm super excited to try that one. It's a kind of that dungeon game, but with the Euro mechanisms. It's currently number 2 on BGG. I think it will hit number 1. It just keeps going up, and it will replace Pandemic Legacy. That's my prediction anyways. So my fear of when Pandemic Legacy came out, that the top 5 games on BGG would just be Pandemic Legacy Seasons 1 through 5, but not in numerical order. I don't think I have to worry about that anymore with Gloomhaven. But for some other Kickstarter games that I have that I'm excited for is Feudum, the redo of Brass, founders of Gloomhaven as well, and also Rising Sun. Those are the ones that I currently have pre-ordered that I'll be expecting to get next year, that I'm looking forward to. When you are learning a new game, do you learn it strict from the rules, or do you get the components out and run through a few rounds to actually see it in action? I usually just learn the game straight from the rulebook. Depending on how complex the game is, I might, when I am about to play it, when I have it set up, kind of just quickly skim through the rules, again, looking at the pieces. But usually I don't have a problem getting through a game, getting through the rules just through the rule book as well. I'm pretty good at doing that. Did I get Clans of Caledonia? Yes, I did. I'm a big fan of Terra Mystica. I heard people compare it a lot to that game, especially when it was on Kickstarter, so that got me interested in it, and that's why I backed the game. I've since played the game 7 or 8 times now. I am enjoying it quite a bit, but when I first played it, my first game, I was kind of like, this is okay. But the more I played it, it's that same sort of thing where I said it's all about trying to get that extra level of efficiencies out of things and manipulating the game in a way to make the most out of it. So after that first play, I was more comfortable with it to the point where I was seeing those ways that I can manipulate it and try and get more efficiencies out of the game, especially with that market, knowing what to sell and selling that to just get those few extra dollars so that you can then maybe get an extra tile out or extra production. Taking those contracts that in that first round giving you money, and if you can potentially complete one in the first round so that you can take a second one and get that extra bonus money is really good. So there's a lot of things in that game that I like manipulating and doing. Sorry, just my throat from talking for 50 minutes straight is starting to get a bit dry. But the one thing that I've seen with clans that I was kind of not really happy with or not too hot on is a lot of the clans, their starting build or their abilities, I feel are too linear. They're too easy to figure out, and they kind of dictate too much how you start playing the game. For instance, there's the milk clan where you can sell milk for $8. It's like, okay, well, when I get that clan, I'm just going to get my 4 cows out. There's the whiskey one, so it's okay, I just want to get my 4 whiskey up and running. Excuse me. But I've since played a few of the other clans, the one that manipulates the market with a little bit better. And I've enjoyed those clans more than I've enjoyed the other ones, for sure. The other thing that I can talk about is the comparison of Clans of Caledonia to Terra Mystica. Because some people say they're similar, some people say they're different. I think they're radically different games. I think the thing that they have in common is just they have a board that you take pieces off of. I mean, a couple of the things that I think are the huge differences is in Terra Mystica, you build buildings. Those give you the resources in order to build more buildings, and that's usually true for almost all of the ones. But in Clans of Caledonia, you have your woodcutters and your miners that are giving you money to build more buildings. But the other ones are you're getting the resources to complete those contracts. So your motivations for building different things are really different. Whereas I feel in Terra Mystica, I want more workers for a specific reason. I'm getting these workers. I want money to be able to do this, or I want priests to be able to do that. Whereas in Clans of Caledonia, I mean, the markets are going to, the import contracts are going to change from round to round. You don't really have much control over it. So you're kind of building things to meet a contract. Well, maybe then I need to build something else because there's no contracts lining up with my current production cycle that I have going. So then I need to kind of switch gears, where I feel like almost all the resources in Clans of Caledonia, other than the money, are kind of just A, B, C, D, E, with no unique abilities tied to them. Whereas I feel in Terra Mystica, they're more, the abilities or what you can do with them are more unique to that type of resource, especially with the priests. The other thing are those round bonuses. in Terra Mystica, the round bonuses give you points for doing things during that round specifically, whereas in Clans of Caledonia, you're getting a bonus for all the accumulated stuff that you've done that meet that criteria from the entirety of the game. So it's not just something that's confined to that one round, as well as those round bonuses in Terra Mystica. They give you a bonus that's going to bump you up for the next turn, whereas there is nothing like that in Clans. So, I mean, I think there's still quite a few other differences in the game, just in the things that make them seem similar, like that taking stuff off to get production. I think the reasons you're doing that are different in the game between the two, and the same thing with those round bonuses are different in the two, and those are kind of the highlights of both of those games. As well as, I know people say the settlement scoring is very similar to Terra Mystica, but it is and it isn't. In Terra Mystica, it's your total number of buildings that are able to connect indirectly to each other, whereas in Clans, it cares nothing about the number of buildings. It cares about the number of groups of buildings that are separated by water. So you're thinking very differently about where you're building in Clans, because you always want to be across the water instead of having a huge group that is just connected on a plane together. The other thing with Terra Mystica is you can kind of get an idea of where people are going to be able to build because of how easy it is for them to terraform. So when I look at Terra Mystica and I look at the map, I kind of have this picture of like this valley and mountains that extend from my home hexes. So the harder it is to terraform, I kind of picture them in my head as mountains, and I kind of work my way through these valleys of easy hexes to terraform. And then when I look at another race, I can kind of see the same things. I can see where we overlap, so I want to make sure that I terraform those first so that I don't get blocked in. Whereas that whole feeling of that in Clans is just not there, because the cost on a hex is the same for everyone. So you're all fighting over these cheap hexes out on the board. So that's very different, I think, and distinct between the two games. All right. We have hit the hour mark. If there are no more questions, I think I will call it here. For now, I want to thank everyone for joining me for this. It's good to have people here, a chance to interact and answer questions. Also, it helps a lot with doing these, knowing that I'm talking to somebody, because I don't think I'd be able to do this just by myself and then put it up on YouTube or put it up on the website for a podcast episode. It definitely helps having that interaction. And I mean, this is why I like doing this, because I like having conversations and talking about games with people. I mean, that's for me, that's what board gaming is about. It's about conversations with people and having this shared interest around a table, and being together and talking. So if there are no more questions, that'll be it for today. I'll do another one of these in a couple weeks, and hopefully I'll see you guys there. All right, until next time. Let's see if I can learn how to stop this. All right, see ya.